Well, hello there, my dear children of the apocalypse. How are we doing today? Welcome back to War Thunder, and welcome to the F-4 Phantom. This plane I do not like. I do not like one bit, and it's not because it's bad, it's just because I'm bad, and that's a fact. The F-4 Phantom, when it was first introduced, wasn't performing quite that well, and I think it's not so much the problem that the plane wasn't performing well, it's that people like to use the dev server. And on the dev server, things are
subject to change.
Subject to change.
Subject to change.
Subject to change.
This is all
Subject to change.
And I think as such, the dev server, there's a fantastic time of hyping up the game, doing free advertisement for Gaijin, and then when it's finally released, those expectations people have of some vehicles, once they get one or two tiny fixes within the first few days of the release, everybody hates it. And I don't know why, but I'm never surprised. I've gotten used to it, because you know what happens every patch, and we have like 5 to 6 patches a year, and it's always the same story. Anyway, I digress. The F-4 Phantom had one major flaw, and that is this piece of shit plane couldn't carry any good rockets. I mean, you know, you're talking about the best plane in the game, some people are calling it, and it gets AIM-9Bs. You know, we all know that B comes before letter E, therefore letter E is superior, and so AIM-9Es were added. Now the plane's still not that good. I think it's down to the playstyle. You know, if you're like me, you like turning once in a while, and if you're like the F-4 Phantom, you don't like turning. The F-4 Phantom doesn't like turning at all. It actually likes going in a straight line, it likes going very fast, and it likes being an annoying little cook to try to shoot down. So you have to find alternative ways to fly certain planes, and with planes like the F-4 Phantom, I've learned from my past experience, having flown vehicles that were similar to this, it's all about repetition. Taking it out game after game after game, and perhaps you'll get this one lucky match where you've actually managed to do some damage. Now, as we know, different planes have different playstyles, and sometimes changing different armaments, changing your fuel, changing just simply the tactic, the direction in which you spawn, the direction in which you fly. On Korea, for example, if you choose to spawn in and turn your plane by 180 degrees, you can completely sort of flank the enemy team. But this is not about sort of spawning in an airfield. This is about purely and simply armament loadouts. One of the tactics, obviously bombs, rockets going after the enemy airfield. The triple gun pod is an option. I also heard the Phantom can in fact carry not just 3 but 5 of those gun pods. So are we going to see that in the future being added to the game? Yeah, probably as a tier 7 premium, but we'll see. Of course, the option that I wanted to go with was the gun pod and the AIM-9E rockets, because for one, I have this love-hate relationship with the fact that rockets are even in the game, but it was more of a hate relationship because I wasn't familiar with this weaponry, right? When something new gets added, I think one of the reasons why us veteran players hate it is because it's change. And if you have any grandparents, or even your parents, usually things are technologically advanced, are sort of, they're out of their world. We say that time has sort of caught up to them, and they tend not to like change. And I'm sort of like that with War Thunder. I would rather see things removed than added, and that's just how it is and how it's going to be. So going through the process of learning these rockets has sort of been, I've been playing on that spectrum of love and hate, and recently been leaning more towards the kind of like it rather than really hate it. But the rockets are still not that good, difficult to use, sometimes lock, sometimes don't, sometimes they fly in a random direction because, yeah, why not? And, you know, then there's the play style that I imply, which at all times I like turning, and I have to force myself to just tell my brain, don't do it, don't turn, keep the speed up. This brings us to the gist of this video, and it is in the title, it is probably being typed out in the comment section about 50,000 times, but this plane, as far as I understand, was an interceptor. An interceptor is a plane that's essentially developed for one reason and one reason only, and that's to engage attackers, bombers, things like that. It's not supposed to be a fighter, and yet, of course, in War Thunder, we have to use it as a fighter. And in this case, this is the best possible thing about it. I have a distinct problem with bombers, and it's because a lot of bomber players are trolls. It's because I do not feel bombers contribute anything to the game whatsoever. I've said multiple times, bombers belong in a single-player campaign where they can have historical missions, they can be actually engaged with squadron plays, people can actually do what their grandparents did, so on and so forth. In RRB, as it is at the moment, if you want this game mode to flourish and be fun and competitive, there's no place for bombers. And it took me a good 100 matches before it clicked. It clicked why I've been having fun here. Why I haven't played tanks recently. Why I don't have any intention of playing ships. Why the old RRB jets, whilst I miss them, I genuinely don't think are as good as this could be if a couple of minor fixes are done, as always. There's no bombers here. Understandably, this could be a very biased opinion coming from me of all people, but I really enjoy that I can go into one matchmaker here in the game that I have fun in, and I don't have to worry about any bomber whatsoever. There's this really rare Votor you might see, you know, the unlucky guy that gets up-tiered. There might probably be somebody who got into a squadron and up-tiered whatever he's flying, but as a general rule of thumb, I don't see any bombers. Now, does this devalue the F-4 Phantom, seeing that it's an interceptor and it's lacking vehicles to intercept? This is something that can always be fixed with, like I said, single-player campaigns. And it's not just bombers that can benefit from this. Imagine that you just unlocked a plane and it's stock and you don't know how to fly it. Wouldn't it be a better idea to take it into a single-player mission where you're not facing enemies that will focus you in spaded planes, where you might go against veteran players with 10 times the amount of skill ceiling that you have, and instead you can go into the single-player campaign, you can fool around, perhaps have multiple respawns, check out different playstyles, and learn how to utilize that plane before you finally take it out into that first match of yours, meaning that you're going to have a better time, and the enemy will have a better time because they'll actually either have a challenge against you, or at least you won't be flying in a way that hinders, drags out the match or whatnot. Because a plane like the F-4 Phantom, flown by somebody who's not skilled, yeah, they're going to be running, they're going to be forcing head-ons, they're going to be prolonging the match most of the time. It's unless you're aggressive and you feel like being a bit suicidal, you're not going to be taking these head-on chances. You're not going to be doing these risky things. You're going to keep your speed up. You're always going to be running. And for an enemy player in an up-tiered Mystère 2B, for example, which is a complete trash plane, nothing to be doing at 9.0, that person can do nothing against you if you keep your speed up. Of course, he could just camp the airfield, but then he's being the cook, so nobody wins. So in the process of learning how to play the F-4 Phantom, I have to name it down to a trifecta. There's 3 different things you have to learn. First and foremost, obviously the plane. Realize the strengths, the weaknesses. Don't use negative Gs, you'll rip your wings off. Don't turn too much, you'll bleed your speed. Little things like that. But then it boiled down to the guns. The guns and the rockets, the 2 types of armament that you have. The rockets are fairly decent. They're quite fun to use, but they're not the most reliable. The main issue I had with rockets is, well, load factor is too high. I don't understand it, because you will literally be flying a plane in a straight line. You're putting no force into the rocket itself. You're pulling no G-forces, and yet the plane just decided, no, right now I'm not going to be firing that rocket, which in a lot of cases, you have to fire that rocket within the 1 or 2 seconds that it locks. Otherwise, you're going to lose the window of opportunity. So the issue of using rockets and guns is that you'll be playing with this debate at every engagement whether or not you should focus on the gun or focus on the rocket. Because the gun might miss and the rocket might not lock, in which case you might be left with nothing, not even a hit. And that can be quite demotivating when it takes a reasonably long time to actually get an enemy into a position in which you can engage with the F-4 Phantom. One of the biggest tips I can give you, of course, is to try to get some help from your teammates, maybe a squadron member. Get a few F-4 pilots together, maybe combine it with an F-100. I think the F-100 is a better plane in general, but combined and team working quite tightly with the F-4 Phantom can be fantastic. One doing the baiting, one sort of chasing, apply a bit of a wolf pack technique. Now, before I end today's video, I wanted to just talk about one more thing that has been grinding my gears like absolutely crazy, and it is the War Thunder spotting system. Now, it's a very taboo topic because whenever I mention it, obviously the majority of comments that start flying in are, oh, you're just bad at the game. It's correct, I'm relatively bad at this game. Still, I know my shit, and I know that if you're going to add supersonic jets, you have to also increase the size of maps, increase the size of airfields, decrease the amount of players per match, and increase the actual spotting system. Because what's happening now is that I'll find myself in an engagement like this, where I'm going head-on with an enemy player, which I can only tell because I have reasonable eyesight and a 1440p monitor. If you're playing on 720p on your grandma's laptop, yep, you'd be dead there, which that guy is. But do you realize that I just killed somebody in a head-on pass before he even appeared spotted? And yet I was looking straight at him with a plane that has a spaded crew. Now that is some next class bullshit.
Subject to change, subject to change, subject to change, subject to change, subject to change.